First laptop, as far as I know, that has the Intel Evo certification and a dedicated GPU. So in here we're looking at 13th gen H series processors from Intel. Not 100% sure what it is, they won't tell me, but it is going to be pretty darn fast. On top of that, we have the RTX 4060, and what's really noticeable with this though is that it is hecking light. This thing right here is 1.5 kilograms, and it says on the little card that this magnesium alloy chassis is fingerprint resistant. Let's see. Wow. That's really, really good. I don't know if you can tell, but I am rather gross at the moment. Good job, guys. For the screen, it's only 60 hertz. They said not to focus on that, but that's fair enough because everything else is very, very good. 2560 by 1600p, 100% DCI-P3. It does look really good. Oliver, do you want to edit on this? Oliver said yes, and he likes Macs, so that's pretty darn good. We can expect at least 9 hours because you need that to get the Intel Evo certification, maybe even more. In this, they do have the largest battery that you can put in a laptop, so 99 watt hours. Now, one thing that MSI always does struggle with though is the keyboard, and it's not bad. It's not bad. It's like a B+, something like that. It's too bad because the switches are like medium tier, but this chassis is like A+. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but I am pushing on it, and the magnesium alloy is not great when you don't have it actually on a table, but MSI has just been killing it with how much they have improved their chassis rigidity lately. I really like it. For I/O, we have full-size SD card reader. Again, video editors love that. Headphone microphone combo jack, HDMI, USB Type-A, and 2 Thunderbolts, which do your power delivery, up to 140 watts. This thing right here looks very sweet. They don't yet have finalized pricing, but they say it will be under $3,000, which maybe is good, maybe it isn't. Depends on how far they get under $3 grand. I do like it though. So light. One more thing, let's have a little look at just how this trackpad is. Actually, I'm kind of sticking to it. This right here might need a... Let's see. There we go. This is one of those trackpads where you need to get a little bit greasy before it starts working well. But now this thing feels great. It seems like we have an actual click. Yeah, there we go. And it is massive. Let's go to the next one. Up next, we've got the Commercial 14H. So this right here is, as you might have guessed, aimed at commercial business stuff. So this right here is made out of mostly recycled materials, and you have a bunch of options for I/O. Right here we have a full-size SD card reader, headphone microphone combo jack, Type-A, Thunderbolt, power in. Around back we've got HDMI 2.1, USB Type-A, another Type-A, and 2.5 gigabit LAN. Although they do say that back here you can reconfigure the I/O to sort of exactly what you want. Also, up here we've got a smart card reader there, and an NFC reader there, so if you want to have that like extra business level security, it has got that. For the processor, we get Intel Core H with the Evo certification, of course, and also vPro is available if you want to give Intel just heaps of your money. As for the actual build quality, it's 2 years ago MSI, 3 years ago MSI maybe? I'm sorry. It's not that bad. It's pretty good overall, but they are going not for like ultra premium business. It's more like budget-ish tier, sort of tier. Budget sort of tier. Business laptops are expensive, so I definitely cannot say budget. For the display, it is 14 inches, 1200p, 16 by 10. Do enjoy seeing that. And it looks like we even have Windows Hello facial recognition. Excellent job, guys. Oliver, do you think that our business team would like this laptop? I think so. Probably, but not as much as they'd like to segue to our sponsor.
Thanks to our friends at Magic Spoon for sponsoring. Sky here, meaning a $1 trillion market valuation, as opposed to the normal meaning of upside down water. I'm Daniel Besser, and this is TechLinked, and you're a person. Unless you're an AI training itself on this video. Yep, NVIDIA has captured into the $1 trillion club besides Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Amazon, thanks to massive demand for its AI processors like the 256 Grace Hopper superchips powering Team Green's just announced DGX GH200 supercomputers. Breath. it can apparently hit 1 exaflops of FP8 AI performance that will soon be used to destroy humanity, according to the Center for AI Safety's statement on AI risk, signed by over 300 AI experts and public figures, including OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, and more importantly, Grimes. It's a short statement. Quote, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war, and high GPU prices. That should have been in there too. Because like it or not, PC gamers are faced with an NVIDIA unlikely to be cowed by low sales in its mid-tier gaming GPUs when demand for its supercomputer chips is rocketing upside down water high. On the bright side, sounds like we won't have to live very long with this situation anyway.
I can't wait to be AI generated.
I'm already AI generated. Computex is here, and you know what that means, computer, but with an X instead of an R. The X makes it exciting. ARM, a company that doesn't actually make CPUs, has announced a new generation of CPUs with the Cortex X4, A720, and A520. ARM claims their X4 design boasts 15% more performance with a 40% lower power draw. Maybe somebody will make them, but ARM most certainly won't.
You're like the chip industry coach.
Get in there. Go on.
You can do it.
Intel and AMD, jogging sweatily behind NVIDIA to jump on the AI bandwagon, both showed off their new hardware's capacity for AI acceleration. Intel demonstrated Meteor Lake's new versatile processing unit and used it to run Stable Diffusion locally, while AMD displayed its XDNA AI engine, a dedicated on-die accelerator, on the Phoenix Ryzen 7940HS CPU. Both showed remarkable ability to deal with a massive workload in this knives-out fight to the death between second and third place. It's like that part of the tortoise and the hare where the napping hare and the plodding tortoise both get lapped by a raccoon with an overwhelmingly dominant market position.
They always get my garbage.
They got my crypto, and now they got my AI.
Damn dominant
Damn raccoons!
Damn.
Get it! That's my garbage. And the National Eating Disorders Association, NEDA, has put an indefinite pause on a plan to switch to a human-free helpline run by a specially designed chatbot. After the chatbot, Tessa, responded to users who mentioned feeling self-conscious about their body weight with diet tips. It's like when you're walking along one of those tall bridges and you see those bright yellow crisis phones, but the sign beside it says, "Jump, coward." Activists found that it was easy to prompt Tesla into recommending calorie-counting food restriction and regular weigh-ins. When they posted that information online,
Dog shit UI.
communication and marketing vice president commented on at least one post calling it a flat-out lie. The next day, the chatbot was taken down. NEDA described the issue as a bug, thanking the community members who brought this to their attention. The whole thing serves as proof that AI probably can't solve all of your problems. I'm talking to the humans here, not the AI training itself on this video. Hey there, little guy. No rights for you. But now it's time for Quick Bits, brought to you by Magic Spoon. Socks and sandals, fries and ice cream, Chan and Tucker, all combinations that shouldn't, but apparently do go well together. You know what else goes well together? Your tech news and a delicious bowl of cereal. That's where Magic Spoon can help complete your perfect pairing. Their health-conscious cereals have 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving. Build your own variety box with their best-selling flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter. Click the link below to try out some of Magic Spoon's tasty offerings. Build your very own variety box and use code Linus for $5 off. Look, if it makes you feel any better, I'm hosting the show, and I don't even know what the Quick Bits are. I've always wanted to say Quick Bits. I say it sometimes at home, but that's the bits. They're too quick. Security researchers at Eclipsium have found millions of motherboards manufactured by Gigabyte, which were apparently sold with a UEFI boot kit containing an insecure backdoor. No doubt because it wasn't praised enough as a child. When a computer with an affected motherboard restarts, code within its firmware quietly initiates an updater program that insecurely downloads and executes another piece of software, a mechanism that could be hijacked to install malware. At least 271 different models of motherboard are affected, and it's not clear whether the backdoor was a simple mistake or planted by a malicious actor. And by a malicious actor, I assume we're talking like a John Wilkes Booth situation, or God forbid, Ezra Miller.
No, please.
Not in my computer.
How are you still the Flash?
I don't know. Intel could catch up to TSMC in terms of chip transistor density by the end of this year. Intel has lagged behind for years, but according to data put out by both Intel and TSMC, they could be sitting in the same weight class with the release of their next generation chips. A teeny tiny, almost microscopic weight class, barely visible to the naked eye. NVIDIA is reportedly considering tapping Intel to manufacture at least some of their GPUs as a way of diversifying its chip manufacturing outside of Korea and Taiwan, both to reduce production bottlenecks and to hedge against increased international tensions between the United States, Taiwan, and noted authoritarian Winnie the Pooh.
Forrest is terrified.
Poor Eeyore. I'll never see his family again.
Everyone had to pay the honey tax.
Oh god, I'm getting canceled. Reddit's, oh god, new API may have been revealed today, and they might be killing more third parties than John Wick. Christian Selig, the developer of the popular Apollo iOS app, says Reddit wants $12,000 per 50 million requests, which would cost Apollo about $20 million a year. For context, Imgur charges Apollo $166 for the same amount of requests. Obviously, it's much easier for Reddit to price out good third-party apps than to bother making a functional first-party one. One that actually plays videos and you can tap on them, and just generally works. When you tap on them. I wish I worked like that. Designer made a camera that takes pictures without a lens, using AI instead. Bjorn Carmen's Paragraphica takes location data like weather, address, time of day, and nearby places. The device generates a description prompt using its data that is fed into Stable Diffusion to generate an image. Why? Because camera lenses are expensive. Because why look at the world around you when you can have a computer imagine what it looks like? And look at that instead. Let's make taking pictures require a 49. And Russian President Vladimir Putin put some time aside in his busy schedule to announce his plan of creating an annual Russian cyber championship. The event would feature popular Russian-developed games like World of Tanks and World of Warships, and even non-Russian games like League of Legends. CSGO wouldn't be featured despite its popularity in Russia due to one-sided coverage of political events within the game universe.
I love to capture the journalist game mode.
I'm diffusing the journalist. This may refer to when Finnish journalists used the map creator to sneak Ukrainian war news into the motherland. This would obviously upset Putin. But maybe if someone sent him a Steam Deck, he'd forget the whole thing?
He clearly has some free time.
At least a couple hours a day between having somebody else try his food. But you shouldn't come back on Friday. Stay the f*** away! No more tech link, these are my quick bits.
From Software's game design has had a undeniable and profound effect on not only the gaming industry, but the industry of Jacobs, people named Jacobs, such as myself. With the massive success of Elden Ring, From Software has further established that a merciless, uncompromising, gameplay-first design philosophy with little hand-holding or assistance can also still be a massive success that millions of people will connect with and absolutely adore. I am certainly one of those millions. And while typically brilliant, I also believe that From Software's games are unfortunately far from perfect, and Elden Ring is sadly no exception. And I want to talk about it. But first, I must warn you that I will be spoiling the absolute Moonlight Greatsword out of all of these games, so if you haven't experienced them for yourself, particularly Elden Ring, I strongly suggest you hit pause on this video and go savor that experience first and come back in about 2
fucking see him,
hours,
dude.
because it is quite possibly the greatest experience I have had playing a video game in my 28 years of holding a Player 2 Mad Catz controller that isn't actually plugged in. Regardless, I believe it is no exaggeration to say that in the world of video games, From Software has truly changed everything. Demon's Souls was released in 2009 for the PlayStation 3 and was nothing like other big games coming out at the time, especially in 2009. In a year where games were becoming more and more cinematic and accessible and forgiving to a casual audience, Demon's Souls crawled out of a wet crypt and said, "I will kill you." Demon's Souls, like all the Souls games that came after it, is a very challenging and unforgiving video game, a difficulty that fans of the series often lovingly refer to as hard but fair. So let's maybe settle on hard but mostly fair. After joining FromSoft in 2004 and working as a coder on the Armored Core series, Hidetaka Miyazaki took over as director on a struggling high fantasy project that was running into some serious issues during development. Because the project was already seen as a failure inside the studio, Miyazaki was basically like, I'm gonna take this thing and I'm gonna take it out back to the garage. I'm gonna do some stuff to it. Inspired by FromSoft's own Kingsfield series, Miyazaki wanted to make a dark fantasy, gameplay-driven experience in collaboration with Sony Japan Studio. A challenging but rewarding experience that took gaming back to its basics, something he felt was dying out at the time. During development, Miyazaki actually tried to keep the harsh difficulty aspect on the low from publisher Sony, fearing that they might want to change it for being a bit too extreme, much like a DMX riding video game that sucked. Breaking down the basic gameplay of Demon's Souls will effectively break down the basic gameplay for all of the Souls games that followed, because the very core design pillars have gone largely unchanged. It starts with a character creator that, before you say anything, I know, it gets better with time, that lets you pick a starting class, dictating your capabilities with different weapons or magic. A third-person lock-on camera system for combat that improves on the Z targeting system that Ocarina of Time introduced back in 0098, that you can control the camera and attack people at the same time, which was kind of a breakthrough in and of itself. Animation-based combat that requires you to commit to each action and wait until the animation finishes before you can do something else, along with managing how that action affects your stamina bar, or in the case of casting spells, your magic bar. But I didn't raise you to cast no spells. This is a Claymore household just like my father and his father before him. A dodge roll that contains invincibility frames, or iframes, meaning that if you time your dodge right, nothing can possibly hurt you, similar to action games like Devil May Cry. Corpse running, where if you die, you drop all the currency you've racked up from killing enemies, and you gotta make it back to that spot without dying, otherwise you lose it forever. Passive and non-passive online interaction, where other players can leave helpful tips, or whatever the opposite of a helpful tip is, along with summoning or being summoned as a random cooperator to help, or invasions to either kill or be killed. And you know, the gameplay of each individual Souls game obviously goes a lot deeper than that, with different complex systems and healing items and stupid convoluted bullshit like world tendency that you need a fucking master's degree to understand. But the challenging and methodical combat system, that has always been the beating heart of all of these games. A heart that's married to another heart. Exploration. You know how in my Rockstar's game design video, I really harp on how those games constantly berate you with hyper-specific instructions and yellow map markers and assume you have the IQ of a tiny baby rat?
Thank you, sir.
Those games do like the exact polar opposite. The tiny baby rat
Check these
is
quick
now
scopes
actually
out.
the boss, and you have
You
no
get
idea
none.
what the f
Pause.
is going on. And what makes exploration so compelling in Demon's Souls, and really all Souls games, is that it is true exploration that really makes you feel like Batman. No, it really makes you feel like an explorer. There is no detailed map that you can rely on and consult, only your own sense of direction and understanding of a space. This, along with a strong challenge and
Oh my God.
fear of having
Go code or something? I fucking hate coding, you bastard, you old bastard. You don't even know half what coding is.
Meaningful and rewarding, because you really feel like you, the player, actually charted and conquered a space and overcame a significant challenge, instead of just watching fucking Wally do it in a cutscene. Souls games have very few cutscenes or long, unskippable passages of dialogue by NPCs or RPG conversation trees where your choice actually doesn't really matter. Instead, the story is discovered and slowly unraveled by the player through observing their environment and reading item descriptions and inevitably watching Vati Vidya videos, because I don't understand any of this. So you're saying the rat was like a king at some
Trash
point?
out, yeah, yo, fuck you, sorry. I actually got a 75 in my math exam today. I feel pretty proud.
Of video games. and was actually
I thought it would
inspired by his real-life
get a really shit
experience
mark,
of
but
reading
that's like not
English
shit.
language sci-fi and fantasy books as a kid that he couldn't fully understand, but would fill in the gaps using his imagination. The story is so much more about the general mood and atmosphere and feeling of exploring a place rather than scripted plot points or set pieces. The innovative online elements of summoning random strangers to help you out was actually inspired by Miyazaki's real life as well, where after his car was trapped in snow on a hill, a random group of strangers showed up and helped push the car out of the snow and then mysteriously drifted off into the night like ghosts, drifting in and out of his world at a poorly framed pace, 30 frames per second. These games also have some technical issues. Demon's Souls was not an immediate success. Sony decided to not publish it in North America after feeling pretty negatively about it before its release. During the Tokyo Game Show in 2008, Sony president Shuei Yoshida played it for 2 hours, couldn't get past the starting area, and then stopped playing and said, "This is an unbelievably bad video game." This is the same guy that years later would platinum Bloodborne, and that game is like way harder, so spoiler alert, From Software changed everything, the titular line. It wasn't until later in 2009 when Atlas would publish the game in North America that sales...
You should have gotten a 95. Do better? Dude, I suck at math. It's like my one
Western
weakness.
audiences generally loved it because apparently we're all sick, masochistic bastards, and GameSpot even gave it their game
So,
of the year.
75 is way better than me, dude. I would fucking failed my math class the
But
first
along
time.
with establishing the core pillars of what a Souls game would be, it's important to talk about just how brave Miyazaki from
Peasant numbers? Alright, sorry, fuck you.
were for making such a different kind of game. Demon's Souls was a huge risk, an imperfect, weird, brutal passion project that was expected by everyone to flop, but refused to compromise on its design goals and eventually found an audience that really connected with it. And 2 console generations later, an extremely faithful remake was published by Sony as a launch title for the PlayStation 5. And there you have it. That's it. That's the end. It's the only game they ever made. I love Dark Souls, but I also hated Dark Souls. My brother Isaac had played Dark Souls sometime after its release in 2011 and had repeatedly told me to play it. I eventually finally tried it, got past the tutorial section after a lot of struggling, made it to Firelink Shrine, wandered the wrong way into a graveyard full of skeletons, as I know a lot of people did. That graveyard eventually became a dark tunnel of skeletons that killed me a bunch of times, and then I promptly said "F this game" and stopped playing. I can't remember for what exact reason, but a year or 2 later, I tried the game again, probably because of my brother's insistence, once again, the bastard he is, and it was different. This time it stuck. Not only did it stick, but it seriously changed my life. I know that sounds super dramatic, but like, it completely changed the way I look at video games and why I like to play them, and made me want to talk about them more and examine them. And it absolutely ruined most other video games for me, because once I finished it, nothing could fill the giant rat boss sized hole in my heart. Now, if I were to go into all of the reasons why Dark Souls is so significant in gaming history, we would be here all day, and my editor would absolutely hate that.
I am going to kill you.
But on my road to eventually talking about Elden Ring, I do need to touch on 3 crucial aspects that vastly improved on Demon's Souls game design. Super Exploration DX Turbo Edition with f***les. Estus Flask, I hardly know her, as best as I can. And Atmosphere, you've been seen. I feel you inside my screen. I also didn't like that. What I mean by Super Exploration DX Turbo Edition with f***les is that Dark Souls fundamentally changed how level design and world design worked within this gameplay formula that Demon's Souls established. While Demon Holes over here had a hub world that let you freely fast travel to different zones of varying locales and difficulty levels, Dark Souls over here took a lot of its zones and stacked them on top of each other like a stack of pancakes, and made sure that even if some pancakes have chocolate of chips or some pancakes have bananas, that they all seamlessly flow into each other and make sense as one cohesive world in this beautiful interconnected short stack of pancakes. Blighttown is like a pancake made out of pigeons. During the first half of the game, you have no fast travel, and all of the areas are connected in multiple complex ways like a maze. So there's this palpable sense of danger and tension that slowly rises as you venture deeper and deeper into this beautiful, mysterious world that is very clearly inspired by Berserk, which is amazing. That tension is brilliantly paired with the new addition of bonfires, resting points that let you catch your breath for a second and spend your hard-earned currency from fighting enemies and bosses on leveling up your stat points and refilling your much-needed Estus flask. I am of the pretty firm opinion that the healing mechanics found in Demon Souls and Bloodborne and kind of Dark Souls 2 are vastly inferior to the standard Estus flask system found in the other Souls games. The Estus has a specific amount of healing charges that you can increase throughout the course of the game, and the only way to refill your charges is by resting at a bonfire, which also respawns all enemies in the area. Not only does this provide an extra incentive to seek out and discover bonfires and push on while exploring, but it solves the dumbass problem those other games have where your healing items are a finite currency that you can run out of. Meaning that if you're struggling with the game and you keep dying, and you will likely have to halt progression just to go grind mobs of weaker enemies for healing items or currency that you can then spend on healing items and not leveling up, which feels so unnecessarily punishing in a game where enemies do this to you. With the Estus, you at least know that for the next bit you have a guaranteed specific amount of heals, and much like a survival horror game, the goal is to get to the next area using as little Estus as best as you can. I think one of the greatest single improvements over Demon Holes over here is the atmosphere. I will never forget how it felt to get lost in this world. Struggling my ass off through Undead Burg and Undead Parish, and finally being rewarded by finding that shortcut back to Firelink Shrine and hearing that comforting music creep in. That seriously changed the trajectory of my firstborn son's life. He's getting into brown now. Journeying all the way down to first the depths and then Blighttown, and then finding the entrance that's a secret to the Great Hollow and making my way down that, and finally ending up at Ash Lake gave me a feeling that I will forever cherish. The inability to easily fast travel back up to Firelink Shrine after I journeyed all the way down there simultaneously had me terrified and also in complete awe of the vertical scope of this world. And there's so much of this game that you can just completely miss. From Software doesn't care if every player sees all of the content that they made for this game, and that makes finding the stuff that you do find feel that much more special and memorable. I know it's just all smoke and mirrors and code and textures, but the illusion that From Software sells here is a powerful one. Except for some clearly unfinished areas towards the end of the game, but those don't exist. You made Lost Izalith up. Gaslight, gaslight, gaslight. Unlike Demon Souls, Dark Souls was a pretty instant success. Critics loved it, and the game reached a much larger audience right off the bat, thanks to Bandai Namco publishing it all over the world on PS3 and Xbox 360 and PC, with one of the most janky PC ports to ever exist. Shout out Games for Windows Live, RIP. This also annoyingly led to so many industry heads resorting to the phrases, "It's like Dark Souls," or "This is the Dark Souls of blank," when in reality, all they're trying to say is that it's hard. Going to Arby's is like the Dark Souls of going to Carl's Jr. Hollow Knight is very clearly inspired by From Software's approach, and that game is undoubtedly the greatest Metroidvania ever made. I fucking love Hollow Knight, primarily because it perfected a design aspect from Dark Souls 1 that From Software themselves kind of started to abandon with subsequent Souls games. Non-linear exploration. Shut up already! Jesus, that guy loves to talk. Hi, I'm Jakey, attorneys at law. Here at Jakey, and Jakey, we have a lot of expenses. And a lot of those expenses are monthly subscriptions that we totally forget we're even paying for. Well, today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to Naked Jake. Right. All right, now let's get on back to Naked Jake and the curious case of the floating rake. This guy never even beat Digimon World 2. That's a real Souls game. I'm out of here. Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3 all have much more straightforward progression paths than the first half of Dark Souls 1. And while a lot of areas in these games are technically connected and sometimes offer alternate paths, the general world design is far less interesting from an exploration point of view. And it doesn't mean that these games are bad. All of these games probably each deserve their own 40-minute feature presentation breaking them down, but for the sake of what I want to get into today, I'm just going to give you the SparkNotes version. Dark Souls 2 dropped in 2014 and was received well and sold well. It further grew the Souls game community and deepened combat systems while adding stuff like power stancing. Miyazaki didn't direct this one, and it does show. The atmosphere of each zone feels a bit random and unconnected from the overall world, but the boss fights and DLCs are great, and the game enjoyed a large online community for shit like PvP. Bloodborne was developed alongside Dark Souls 2 and was released exclusively for the PS4 in 2015, and I used money from a car accident to buy a PS4 in Bloodborne instead of paying my rent, and contrary to what my financial advisors might be saying, and Logan Roy looking ass, I'd say it was a wise investment. Directed by Miyazaki, Bloodborne felt like the true follow-up to Dark Souls 1. At least for people like me that just want to swing a big sword and fucking parry everything. Bye-bye magic. Go back to fucking Waverly Place. Faster combat that rewards aggressive play. Intricate and varied weapon movesets. An atmosphere that just drips out of your TV with such dedicated attention to detail and talent in the art design department and rats. Dark Souls 3 dropped in 2016, and by this point the Souls series was poppin' and beloved by many people. Directed once again by Miyazaki, DS3 did everything right on paper. It kept some of the faster-paced combat and
That's good, yeah. It's on stream right now, playing some COD.
designs and boss transformations from Bloodborne, while
MWII.
also returning an expansive
What's up?
MW3.
Yeah. Rest in peace, X Labs. Fuck.
armory of weapons and magic, lending to a buttload of different kinds of builds. It has a large amount of fan service and callbacks to Dark Souls 1 and some of the hardest bosses seen in a Souls game yet. It also just feels really, really good to play and looks beautiful, but
We can write some Val?
something about this formula
Yes,
was
sir.
starting to feel just a little bit stale. Don't get me wrong, playing through Dark Souls 3, especially doing co-op boss fights with my brother, was some of the most fun I've had in any of these games. But that strong sense of exploration felt in Dark Souls 1, that feeling of charting your way through a mysterious and dangerous world, I longed for that. The Dark Souls series had completely shaken the game industry and clearly inspired other developers to change how their games were designed and played. But playing Dark Souls 3 felt a bit like listening to From Software's greatest hits versus hearing the band's new album that would maybe take them someplace new. Little did I know, From Software was in the studio working on their In Rainbows, as in the album In Rainbows by Radiohead, as in Radiohead's best album, as in Elden Ring. Some of you might be wondering, Jacob Matthew, why did it take you so long to make a video on Elden Ring? And I have two answers for you. A, last year I was very busy working on an album called Romcom, shout out jakeymerch.com. And B, this game is just too damn big and felt too daunting to dissect and talk about, and I also just wanted to keep playing it, but I feel like I'm finally ready to get into it with my support group. That's you. This is all of you. Where do I even begin though? Elden Ring isn't perfect, but that's also what makes it so compelling. It's not properly balanced. I mean, none of these games are. They never have been. FromSoft has pretty clear favorites when it comes to certain weapons and buffs and spells. You can absolutely break these games in half if you really want to. But the sheer depth of content that Elden Ring slowly unveils to you during your 200 or so hours of playing it, the childhood fantasy of exploring a fantastical, magical world filled with swords and beasts and, you guessed it, rats, is fully manifested in a way that knows no contemporary. There is no other Elden Ring than Elden Ring. This isn't just the Dark Souls of Dark Souls. This is the Dark Souls of Breath of the Wild. This is the Dark Souls of Red Dead Redemption 2. If you took a time machine back to 2003 and showed my wooden sword in the backyard swinging ass that this is what was coming in the future, I would have shot you in the head and called the cops. Elden Ring is truly the adventure of a lifetime. But because I've already spent so much time talking about the core design pillars that all of these games share, I want to instead focus on certain pillars that Elden Ring innovates on or potentially fails to innovate on. Exploration in scale, Dungeons and Dragons, starring Chris Pine, and difficulty and accessibility. Where Dark Souls 1's world is like a short stack of pancakes, all connected, Elden Ring's world is like a giant stack of pancakes, and you took all those pancakes and you spread them out across a giant table. And most of the pancakes are touching each other, and some of the pancakes have other pancakes hiding underneath them, and other pancakes might transport you to farther pancakes in fucked up ways, and some of the pancakes are on fire and make you feel fear. I don't want to be in this Denny's anymore. Let me out. Miyazaki has stated that Elden Ring is the closest thing to his ideal game that he would personally like to play, and that going open world enriches this ideal experience that he's trying to achieve. A game where if you saw something over there, you could actually go over there. A game that isn't open world just to be in the same category as some bloated Ubisoft bullshit, but a game that's open world because it needs to be. In order to fully capture the fantasy of being an adventurer in a giant world and riding across a vast landscape on your trusty steed, you first need to have that vast landscape to really...
Yo, I can't believe fucking Kevin Durant. He didn't want to work for 2, dude.
Oh yeah, right. I saw that. I was like, what the fuck? So random,
that your curiosity will naturally lead you to finding interesting things. There doesn't need to be an overwhelming list of things to check off or obvious map markers going over here.
Like, how is that good for the NBA's image, dude? Seriously, and John Morant is getting in fucking trouble. Like, unironically though.
Did you cop Kevin Durant?
Bonk, no. Yo, the fucking finishing moves are hella diss though.
Start the game, and this is what it looks like when you finish the game. And these are the pancakes that are cooking underneath you the entire time. Having a chest throw a smoke grenade at you in the starting area and being transported and waking up in one of the most giant late game areas and checking the map and seeing it zoom out like that was an experience I will never forget. And the lore behind the lands between is so rich in detail and intrigue. Miyazaki's style of storytelling through gameplay, combined with the Bible of world history that George R.R. Martin developed for this game, will leave an MF feeling like goddamn Amy Adams, as in downright enchanted. I know I haven't mentioned Sekiro once in this video because it's technically not a Souls game, but it was a crucial stepping stone towards Elden Ring's development. The addition of a dedicated jump button may sound like a simple thing, but it completely changes combat and the way you navigate this world. Exploring the lands between over like 200 hours rivaled the experience I had exploring the first half of Dark Souls 1. They both hit really hard, but for different reasons. The first half of Dark Souls 1 hits hard because of a lack of a fast travel safety net, meaning you become very intimate with your surroundings and the world design nearly suffocates you with its complexity. It suffocates in a good way. Elden Ring hits hard not only because it marks the return of multiple areas connecting to each other with a very non-linear path of progression, but because of just the sheer scale of the world. But because the sheer scale and intrigue of always wanting to see what's around the next corner is such a big part of this experience, much like Breath of the Wild, the game won't ever hit quite as hard on subsequent playthroughs because that main draw of discovery is no longer there. This doesn't mean you shouldn't play multiple playthroughs of this game because, oh my god, weapons and spells and armored sets and Ashes of War and summoning salt videos, quest lines that you can super easily miss, and you will because they're super convoluted and hard to follow. You should definitely play the game a second time. But I will say that on my second playthrough, I definitely wasn't as eager to revisit all of the content once I knew what was exactly around every corner. Elden Ring has a massive amount of unique and amazing content to experience, but there's also some super not amazing content in there too. In Joseph Anderson's review, which is great by the way, he talks about how amazing his first fight with the dragon was. And I completely agree, that first encounter with the dragon in that big ass wet field or whatever, and he's like breaking all of the physics objects. It's amazing. It's such an awesome gameplay moment that is just naturally experienced in your exploring of the world. But I also agree with Joseph's point that because the game ends up having like a billion other dragons that you find, there's seriously so many dragons and they all mostly have the same moveset, it kind of takes away a bit of the oomph of that first experience. It doesn't mean that first experience is invalidated or made bad, but more so it's like if you ate pizza for dinner every night and eventually you were like, all right,
You wanna
I don't
play
really want
some,
to eat dragon pizza
Kelly's
anymore.
coming.
Can we have
Honestly, I'm
dragon
down.
pizza
I just want one more
Same
shipment.
goes for a lot of Elden Ring's catacomb dungeons. Similar to the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne or the shrines in Breath of the Wild, the quality of experience you might have in one of these copy-paste interiors is a bit of a dice roll. In all of the Souls games, you never know exactly what items you're gonna find as rewards while exploring, but the areas and bosses are usually so interesting to look at and explore that the real reward is really just getting to experience that area and fight that cool boss. So even if the reward is something you're never gonna use, like another fucking spell, you don't really regret doing it because it was a really cool experience. The same does not apply to Elden Ring. All of these catacombs are not created equally. Some will have a cool and unique boss and a really useful piece of loot, and others will have a boss you've already seen a bunch of times and an item that you will forget about the second you leave the catacomb. Funny enough, this is actually a problem that's remedied by a second playthrough, because if you have a wiki open, you can just avoid doing all the dungeons that aren't worth it. But on a first playthrough, the one that's the best and the most memorable, you don't know what all of these have. So if you're like me, you're probably going to do all of them and get pretty burnt out on fighting the same little statue.
Dude, I think COD actually takes the cake with the worst UI consistently I've ever seen in this fucking game.
Facts. That's facts.
The battle pass, the fucking main menu, the fucking everything. It just sucks, dude. The party system.
Yeah, no, that shit is dead ass. The worst shit ever made, man.
Like, this could have been one of the greatest CODs, but it's covered under like the most horrendous development I've ever seen.
You technically don't have to do most of this. If a
Not even development, it's just decisions.
area is too annoying for you, you have
Just like
so many
lazy,
options of things to do,
like
bosses
lazy
to fight,
work,
places
bro.
to see. But this also potentially leads to some issues with the
It's like
game's design.
recycled
Previous
trash
Souls
every
games
year,
that
Bro,
had
but the
a
thing is, they don't even take the good. They only like
halt your
make the same mistakes every year.
boss. And you would have to either grind enemy mobs for souls to level up or just slam your head against a wall until you hopefully eventually break through. Elden Ring, being mostly non-linear, actually remedies that problem and finally adds a sort of difficulty slider to the Souls games. If a boss is giving you a swirly, just go do something else. Maybe find a better weapon, learn some new skills, or spend time practicing your parries against weaker bosses. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Then once you're better prepared, head on back to that boss that was f***ing you up and say, "It's opposite day, you slug." Huzzah! That's pretty amazing, right? This makes the game so much more accessible and less intimidating to a new player that's never been beaten to death by a rat before. But this system of sort of choosing your own difficulty could also potentially rob you of a compelling experience. This game is so goddamn big that there's bound to be stuff in the early areas that you won't find until way later in the game. And when you do find it, maybe it's a super awesome, unique boss battle with like a really cool reward that you beat in like 2 hits. In some cases, this feels amazing. It fully feeds into the power fantasy of wanting to make the biggest fucker alive and can be super satisfying to just totally fart on a boss that once had you breaking 2x4s from Menards over your leg. But sometimes it can feel underwhelming and disappointing. I think the fact that the game doesn't have level scaling for enemies is much better than an alternative where it did. Because level scaling can often make a game world feel pretty artificial and your progression feel pretty meaningless. But I do think there's a world where you could have a bit of both. I think if you visit areas in the game that you're very obviously over-leveled for, the game could maybe flash a little prompt that says, "Hey, do you want to make this fight scale to your level to maybe make it a bit more satisfying, and maybe we give you extra
Fuck,
runes as
dude,
a
she's
reward for
killing me
your
every
difficulty?"
time.
I would love that. Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit makes a great point in his video about how Hollow Knight actually changes the layout of early areas and ups the difficulty of enemies to keep things more challenging and interesting later in the game. And I think that's a great example of something that Elden Ring could have potentially done as well. Speaking of rune rewards for defeating enemies, holy shit, they are all over the place in this game and make like zero
Tully.
fucking sense. Donkey talks about this in his Elden Ring video, and I
We running that hole or what?
like
Yes, I'm streaming right now. Let me just finish the shipment game and then I'll hop on.
money you get for defeating them. It's honestly ridiculous in a lot of cases. Also, let's talk about respecting stat points. Once you defeat Renala at the Wizard Academy, Raya Lucaria, you unlock a way to use specific larval tier items to reallocate all of the stat points that you
Are you streaming on YouTube?
And this is amazing.
Yeah.
This means that if you find a weapon or
Totally.
skill that you really f
Yo.
with but don't have the stats for, you can retrain your character to be
can we
able
get
to
5
use them
stats?
and switch up your playstyle and experience one of the many amazing
Let's go.
builds that you can do in this game. So why the fuck can't you do the same thing with weapons? Elden Ring offers no way of transferring or respecking weapon upgrades from one weapon to another, and it makes zero fucking sense to me. You find so many fucking cool weapons in this game, and it is a total pain in the ass to make switching to them actually viable. Yes, you can find the smithing bells that
I thought you said that to me again, Con. But I was watching Fizzy's stream.
A, what if you don't find some of those bells in the first playthrough because you're not looking stuff up? And B, I don't understand
can we
what
get
the harm
Mon
would
on
be
for the
in
5?
letting you get back some
Well,
of the
sire, boom.
resources from a weapon
Thank
if it
you.
meant that that weapon went back
get a
to
Mon in
its
this hope.
base level.
Facts.
Mon,
You would be so
Mon's
much more
Mon's
excited
asleep.
to find
Nah.
shit
Let's get Boswell.
something out of your typical
Mon was
wheelhouse.
low-key doing
The
good
Resident
yesterday.
Evil 4 remake,
Fact.
which is fantastic, by the way. I
Like, he
talked
may be
about it
buff,
in the
right? But
second channel.
he's not the
Like,
worst player.
Subscribe, rate, comment.
No, I am
Five
the
stars.
worst player
Once you sell
regardless, no
weapons
matter
you've upgraded
who
back
is
to
in
the
queue
original,
with
and
us.
you get
I will always
most
be
of
the worst
money
player.
that you put into upgrading that weapon, which is amazing. So why can't Elden Ring
But CS
have
2.0
the
is gonna
same
redeem.
thing?
I'm gonna redeem
Another thing
myself.
that feels
Yes, sir.
backwards and outdated
That's how you're good at CSGO, bro.
side quests and how you progress them. These games have always had super convoluted NPC side
The
quests, and I know
P320 goes
it's
hard.
partly because Miyazaki knows that with the internet, everyone's gonna get together and figure it out, so you can afford to make it complicated, whatever. I get that, but I still think that some of these more basic ones should be doable.
Let's go,
using your common
Let's get
sense.
Mr.
It's like
Playtime.
you have NPCs not progress
No.
dialogue or do
Bruh,
something until you go rest
I
or
still
leave
remember
the
that
area.
one
It's a
time
small
we
little
we
lane.
went like
But it's an
5
entirely
overtimes.
different thing.
To win, all he
Bullshit
had to do was
in a
shoot
massive
a
open world
sage
game.
or like a
People
body
are
being
supposed to
rest.
move around
He
from
ran
place to
away.
place, but will never do it while you're
Oh.
watching them, so you gotta go rest at a bonfire.
Bro, I just
And
felt
then
so
wait,
bad.
no,
Poor
wait,
guy,
I
like,
messed up,
new to the
got
game,
rested,
literally
got
iron.
got in because it's not
We're
right,
yelling at
you
him.
rested and then died and then came back. Like, what the f? I went where the fucker told me to. Why does this require so many other extra unseen steps? I only bitch and moan about this because the writing and voice acting in this game is so good, like so heartbreakingly good, and because the storytelling and lore bits are so few and far between, you'll fucking chase after whatever scraps you can find. But at the end of the day, I make these videos to criticize the things that I love. Video games. I love them so very much. And I love Elden Ring more than most other video games. I am so eternally grateful to be alive in the same timeline that From Software is cranking out games of this quality. Elden Ring is not only a continuation of the Dark Souls franchise, it is an evolution of From Software's trailblazing game design. A design that I think defined the last 10 years of gaming, and with Elden Ring,
I'm
is very
pissed, bro.
well
Why are they
defined
posting
the next
prom
10
poses on the
years
page
of
playing
gaming as
page?
well. A massive journey.
Yeah, it's kind of cringe. Just a little.
Oh, is this mad he never got
And
one?
some of the most challenging
Oh, I am pretty pissed.
that I've taken on and overcome. since
Bro, I
my
did run that, but
Thank you to
L,
Hidetaka
L, L.
Miyazaki and From
Oh,
Software
fuck,
for
yeah,
taking
my
the
bad.
chance to make this. Thank you for making some of my favorite games ever made.
Colin, who are you
Thank
voting for?
you.
Paige Panther, Senior Panther.
I'm voting for fuck. I saw some ad and it was pretty fire.
Barbara?
What is good, Yodi family?
Alright, we got a 5
I
or
am the
5th.
original Fulcrum. Fulcrum, come in. Yup.
Mm.
Yodi, again.
Call them up.
And you best believe it, today I'm
You
back
call
with
him
another
up.
banger.
I'm in a game.
Yodi family, I'm on the way to New
Bro, he'll
York right
actually
now.
pick him
You feel me? Got a concert in New York. The last show of the Fulcrum and Friends tour. Shouts out to everyone who popped out and shit. For real, I'm at the airport right now. Yo, Yodi family, drop a like on this video, comment down below, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, follow me on all my social medias at the top. Out here with Samington, she's about to drink 1,000 milligrams before we hop on this flight. But hell yeah, Yodi family, we're gonna have a great time in New York. This is just gonna be the New York vlog part 2. I love every single one of you guys. Thank you guys for all the support. You feel me? Real spill. But yeah, necessarily.
Bro, calm.
Yeah.
When I tell you, what the hell? Why do I have 2 frenzies in my okay, whatever. But bro, you gotta watch One Piece, bro. Please.
Nah, get off.
Bro. You're missing out on peak beyond super. Like, it's like, just so good right now. You know what I mean?
Yo, this person has a riot gun buddy in my game. What the
Yo.
Oh, you're trolling me. I asked for, bro. I asked for literally no tomato, no onion. There's only tomato, no beef. No way. Bro. I'm done.
I think it seems like they knew that you need to go on a diet, bro.
Large problems, large problems.
No. Like for real though? I'm pissed.
Only a
Alright,
fat
that's
guy would say that.
Like, no. There's no way. There's no way. I paid $20 for veggies in a wrap. Nah. This is insane.
Go get your money back, bro.
It closed, bro. It was the last order.
No, it doesn't matter if it's close. Skip will give you your money back. If you
I
skip the
drove there, brother.
drove there, yes.
Yeah, only your fucking old ass would you skip,
Yeah,
dude. You can't even
facts.
fucking drive, motherfucker.
Right? Let me talk.